The rain hammered my skull like 1,000 angry fists as I watched my wife's BMW disappear into the darkness. 87 miles from home, according to the green highway sign that flickered in the storm. Alma had just pushed me out of her car like yesterday's garbage, and Miles, her business partner and secret lover, had laughed from the passenger seat while Ava, her manipulative best friend, filmed it all on her phone. "You needed a lesson, Cedric," Alma had sneered through the cracked window. "Maybe walking home will teach you some humility." Daisy, our 14-year-old daughter, had giggled from the back seat. That sound cut deeper than the rain soaking through my jacket. I didn't run after them. I didn't scream or beg. Instead, I memorized the license plate, noted the time on my waterproof watch, and stepped directly under the highway security camera. Then I smiled. Her cruelty had just ended. This was her last mistake. The headlights of a black pickup truck cut through the rain like a knife. Rico, my head of security, stepped out and handed me a burner phone and a thick manila folder. "Ready, boss?" he asked, his military bearing unchanged despite the weather. "Oh yeah," I said, climbing into the warm cab. "Let's begin." The drive home gave me time to think. Cedric Fallon, 38 years old, owner of 3 successful auto body shops in Pinegate. I'd built my business from nothing, working 18-hour days while Alma climbed the corporate ladder at Morrison, Blake & Associates. We'd been married 16 years, and for the last 3, I'd watched her transform from the ambitious law student I'd fallen for into something cold and calculating. The signs had been there for months, late nights that stretched into dawn, mysterious text messages she'd hide when I entered the room, new lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom, hotel receipts in her purse for places she claimed never to have visited, but tonight she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "The neighbors saw everything," Rico said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Mrs. Patterson was walking her dog when they dragged you out here. She's already posted about it on the Pinegate Community Facebook group." I nodded. Pinegate was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, a once prosperous suburb that had seen better days, filled with big houses on small lots and residents who lived for gossip. Alma's public humiliation of me would be the talk of the town by morning. "Good," I said. "Let them see what she really is." We pulled into my driveway at 2:47 a.m. The house looked different somehow, larger, more imposing. Maybe because I finally saw it for what it really was. My fortress, not our home. Rico handed me the folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, hotel receipts, and printed screenshots of text messages that would make a sailor blush. Months of careful documentation. "Everything you asked for," he said. The private investigator was thorough. I flipped through the evidence. Alma and Miles at the Riverside Inn. Alma and Miles at his downtown condo. Financial records showing she'd been funneling money from our joint account into a private savings account I'd never heard of. A lease agreement for an apartment across town, signed by both of them. My wife wasn't just having an affair, she was planning her escape, and she intended to take everything with her. "What's the first move?" Rico asked. I looked at our house, the house I'd bought and paid for, the house where I'd raised my daughter, the house Alma had turned into a stage for her deception. "Change the locks," I said, "cancel her credit cards, and make sure her car won't start in the morning." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Rico nodded and pulled out his phone. Within minutes, he'd contacted our locksmith, our bank, and Tommy from my shop who specialized in creative automotive solutions. At dawn, I watched from the kitchen window as Alma's BMW limped into the driveway, steam pouring from under the hood. She tried her key in the front door 3 times before realizing the locks had been changed. Her credit card bounced at the gas station, her phone service had been suspended, and her car insurance had been canceled. She stood on the front porch in yesterday's clothes, soaked from the rain, pounding on the door and screaming my name. I opened the window and looked down at her. "Problem, honey," I called out. "Open this door right now, Cedric." "I don't think so. This is my house, bought with my money, and you don't live here anymore." "You can't do this. I have rights." I held up the manila folder. "Actually, I can. Adultery voids our prenuptial agreement. You remember the prenup, don't you? The one your lawyer insisted would protect you?" Her face went white. The prenup had been her idea, designed to keep my business assets separate from any potential divorce settlement. She'd never imagined it would work against her. "We can talk about this," she said, her voice suddenly smaller. "We're done talking. You made that clear when you left me on the highway." Mrs. Patterson walked by with her little terrier, phone already out and recording. Within an hour, the video would be all over social media. Alma Fallon, successful attorney, locked out of her own home like a common criminal. I closed the window and went to make coffee. The first phase was complete. Now came the real work. By noon, half of Pinegate had driven by the house to see Alma sitting on the front steps with her suitcase. She'd called a taxi to take her to Ava's place, but not before the neighbors had gotten their fill of photos and videos. I spent the morning at Murphy's boxing gym, the same place I'd trained as an amateur fighter 20 years ago. The heavy bag still hung in the same corner, and old Murphy still sat behind the desk, reading the sports section and pretending he wasn't watching every punch I threw. "Heard you had some trouble at home," Murphy said when I finally stopped to catch my breath. "Nothing I can't handle." "Your wife always seemed like the type who'd fight dirty." I unwrapped my hands and sat down on the bench. "She thinks she's smarter than everyone else. Always has." "Smart women can be dangerous," Murphy said, "but they get overconfident. Start believing their own hype. That's when you counter." "Counter? Boxing 101, Cedric. Let them swing first, get them off balance, then hit them where they're not expecting it." I nodded. Alma had thrown the first punch when she left me on that highway. Now it was my turn. That evening was Daisy's school gala, a fundraising event for the drama department. Alma had bought tickets months ago, back when we were still pretending to be a happy family. I decided to make an appearance. The Pinegate High School gymnasium had been transformed with streamers and fairy lights, but it still smelled like teenagers and floor wax. Parents clustered around tables, making small talk and writing checks they couldn't afford. Alma stood near the refreshment table, wearing a black cocktail dress and her best fake smile. Miles hovered beside her like a well-dressed parasite, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. Ava worked the room like a PR professional, no doubt doing damage control after the morning's spectacle. I walked straight up to them. "Evening, folks," I said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Beautiful night for a family event." Miles straightened his tie and smirked. "Cedric, surprised to see you here. Thought you might be too embarrassed to show your face after this morning's incident." "Embarrassed? Why would I be embarrassed? I'm not the one who got locked out of my own house." Alma's cheeks flushed. "That's enough, Cedric. Don't make a scene." "Make a scene? Like abandoning your husband on a highway in the middle of the night? That kind of scene?" The conversations around us had stopped. Everyone was listening now. Miles stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Maybe we should take this outside." I looked him up and down. Miles Rourke, 42 years old, soft around the middle, manicured nails, expensive suit. He probably hadn't thrown a punch since middle school. "You know what, Miles? You're right. Let's take this outside." But instead of heading for the door, I grabbed the microphone from the DJ booth. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice echoing through the gymnasium, "I'd like to make a toast to family values." Alma lunged for the microphone, but I stepped back. "Some of you may have heard that my wife and I are having some marital difficulties." "It's true. Turns out 16 years of marriage doesn't mean much when your spouse decides to pursue other interests." The room was completely silent now. Even the teenagers had stopped talking. But I want everyone to know that I hold no grudges. In fact, I wish Alma and her business partner Miles all the happiness in the world. They certainly seem to have found it at the Riverside Inn, the downtown Marriott, and Miles's condo on Elm Street. I set the microphone down and walked toward the exit. As I passed Miles, I grabbed a glass of punch from the refreshment table and poured it slowly over his head. "Oops," I said. "How clumsy of me." The gymnasium erupted in whispers and gasps. Someone started clapping, then others joined in. By the time I reached the parking lot, half the room was applauding. Rico was waiting by the truck, engine running. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Better than expected. What's our next move?" "Already in motion. The hotel security footage should be hitting her law partner's email accounts right about now." I smiled. Morrison, Blake, and Associates had a strict policy about personal conduct that reflected on the firm. Alma had signed the morality clause herself when she made partner. "And the other thing?" "Daisy's TikTok account has been temporarily suspended for violating community guidelines. Turns out posting videos of family drama isn't allowed when it involves minors." That stung a little. My own daughter had been broadcasting our family's destruction for likes and followers. But she was 14, and 14-year-olds did stupid things, especially when their mother was filling their heads with poison. We drove home through the quiet streets of Pinegate. The house felt different now, cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the rooms. I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch, listening to the crickets and planning my next move. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're going to regret this. E." Alma, texting from Ava's phone. Always dramatic. I typed back, I already regret marrying you. Everything else is just cleanup. The response came immediately. This isn't over. I looked out at the yard where Daisy used to play when she was little, before smartphones and social media and her mother's ambitions turned her into a stranger. No, I said to the empty air. It's not. Monday morning brought consequences. Alma's law firm had acted swiftly after receiving the hotel security footage. By 9 a.m., she'd been called into a partners meeting. By 10 a.m., she'd been suspended pending a full investigation. By noon, she'd been terminated for conduct detrimental to the firm's reputation. I learned this from Janet Morrison herself, the senior partner who called me personally to apologize for the situation. We had no idea about Alma's extracurricular activities, she said. The firm can't be associated with this kind of behavior. Our clients expect better. I understand completely, I replied. These things happen. If there's anything we can do to help during this difficult time, actually there is. Alma has been using firm resources for personal business. I have documentation if you're interested. The documentation Rico had gathered showed Alma using the firm's private investigator to dig up dirt on her own husband, me. She'd also been padding her expense reports and using company credit cards for personal purchases, including several romantic dinners with Miles. Janet Morrison was very interested indeed. By Tuesday, Alma's professional reputation was in ruins. Word traveled fast in legal circles, and Morrison, Blake, and Associates had made sure everyone knew why she'd been terminated. No other firm in the city would touch her. Meanwhile, I'd been busy with my own projects. The joint bank accounts were frozen pending divorce proceedings. The house, which was solely in my name thanks to that prenuptial agreement, was off-limits to Alma. Her car had been repossessed. Turns out the loan was in default when I stopped making payments. But Alma wasn't going down without a fight. She'd enlisted Ava as her general in a war of public opinion, and Ava was good at her job. Suddenly, I was the villain in every version of the story making the rounds on social media. I was controlling, abusive, manipulative. I'd isolated Alma from her friends and family. I'd driven her into the arms of another man through my neglect and cruelty. The narrative was compelling, and some people bought it. My business started getting negative reviews online. Someone spray-painted "wife beater" on the side of my shop. A few longtime customers stopped coming around. But I'd been expecting this. Alma always played the victim when she didn't get her way. The difference was that this time, I had evidence. Wednesday evening, I got a call from Rico. "We found something," he said. "You need to see this." We met at the shop after hours. Rico had been conducting his own investigation into Ava's background, and what he'd found was interesting. "Ava Sinclair," he said, spreading photos and documents across my desk. "Real name, Ava Kowalski. She's got a record. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. Did 2 years in minimum security about 5 years ago." How did Alma not know this? She did know. Look at this. He handed me a printed email chain between Alma and Ava from 3 years ago. Alma had hired a private investigator to vet Ava when they first met, discovered her criminal background, and decided to use it as leverage. Alma's been blackmailing her own best friend? Gets better. Look at the dates on these hotel receipts. Rico spread out a timeline that showed Alma's affair with Miles had started exactly 1 week after she'd hired Ava as her personal assistant. The whole relationship had been orchestrated. Ava's been working for Alma all along, I realized. The affair, the public humiliation, even Daisy's social media posts. It's all been planned. There's more. Ava used to work for you, remember? About 6 years ago, you fired her for skimming from the till. I did remember. Ava had been my office manager for about 8 months before I caught her stealing. I'd fired her quietly, without pressing charges, thinking I was being merciful. She's been planning this revenge for 6 years, Rico said. She got close to Alma, manipulated her into the affair, and now she's trying to destroy your reputation. The pieces fell into place. Ava hadn't just been helping Alma cheat. She'd been orchestrating the entire thing. The affair with Miles was real, but it had been Ava's idea. The public humiliation, the social media campaign, even Daisy's betrayal, all of it had Ava's fingerprints on it. I sat back in my chair and laughed. I actually laughed. "What's funny?" Rico asked. "They think they're so smart. Alma with her law degree, Ava with her schemes, Miles with his money, but they made one crucial mistake." "What's that?" "They underestimated me." Thursday morning, I made some phone calls. By afternoon, Ava's PR firm had received an anonymous tip about their employee's criminal background. By evening, she'd been terminated for failing to disclose her conviction on her job application. Miles was next. His real estate development company had been cutting corners on safety inspections, and the city building department was very interested in the documentation Rico had gathered. Miles would be spending the next few months dealing with lawsuits and regulatory investigations, but I wasn't done. Not even close. Friday evening, I got another text from Alma's borrowed phone. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming," I replied. "Enlighten me. Daisy hates you. The whole town thinks you're a monster. Your business is failing. How does it feel to lose everything?" I looked around my house, not our house anymore, and smiled. "I haven't lost anything that mattered," I typed back. "But you have." The response came quickly. "We'll see about that." "Yes," I said to the empty room. "We will." The confrontation I'd been planning came together like a well-orchestrated symphony. Every piece had to be in perfect position, every player exactly where I needed them to be. Saturday morning, I sent identical text messages to Alma, Miles, Ava, and Daisy from different burner phones. "Emergency at the lake house. Daisy missing. Come alone. Don't call police yet." The lake house was a family property I'd inherited from my grandfather, a rustic cabin on 40 acres of wooded land, 2 hours from Pine Gate. Perfect for what I had in mind. Rico and I arrived first, setting up cameras in every room and ensuring the live stream to my social media accounts was working properly. I wanted the whole world to see what happened next. Alma arrived first, driving a rental car and looking frantic. She pounded on the door, screaming Daisy's name. I opened it calmly. "She's not here yet." "What do you mean she's not here? Your message said—" "I know what my message said. Come in and wait." She hesitated, probably sensing a trap, but maternal instinct won out. She stepped inside just as Miles's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. "You lying piece of—" She started, then stopped when she saw the cameras. "Smile, honey. We're live on Facebook." Miles burst through the door, followed closely by Ava. Daisy arrived last, looking confused and scared. "Dad? What's going on? Where's the emergency?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, for the first time in months. 14 years old, caught between warring parents, used as a weapon by adults who should have protected her. "The emergency, Daisy, is that your mother and her friends have been lying to you, and it's time you knew the truth." I gestured to the wall-mounted television, where I'd prepared a slideshow of evidence. Hotel receipts, text messages, bank statements, photographs, and recorded phone calls. "Your mother has been having an affair with Miles for 8 months. She's stolen money from our family accounts. She's been planning to leave us both and start a new life." Daisy looked at Alma, her face crumpling. "Mom? Is that true?" Alma's composure finally cracked. "It's not what it looks like, baby. Your father is trying to turn you against me." "Actually," I said, advancing to the next slide, "it's exactly what it looks like. But that's not even the best part." The next image showed Ava's criminal record and the email chain revealing her true identity. "Ava here isn't your mother's friend. She's a convicted felon who's been manipulating this whole situation for revenge. She used to work for me, and when I fired her for stealing, she spent 6 years planning this elaborate scheme." Ava stepped forward, her mask finally slipping. "You destroyed my life, Cedric. You ruined everything I'd worked for. You destroyed your own life when you decided stealing was easier than earning. So you admit it," Alma said, pointing at the camera. "You admit you've been planning this revenge?" "I've been planning to protect myself and my daughter from people who would use us and throw us away. There's a difference." The room erupted into arguments. Alma screamed at Ava for manipulating her. Ava screamed back that Alma had been a willing participant. Miles tried to leave, but Rico blocked the door. Daisy sat in the corner, crying and filming everything on her phone. "Stop!" I shouted, and the room fell silent. "We're going to settle this right now, in front of everyone." I pulled out a small cardboard box and set it on the coffee table. "DNA test kit," I announced. "Daisy, there's something you need to know about your parentage." The room went completely still. Daisy stopped crying and stared at the box. "What are you talking about?" Alma whispered. "I'm talking about the fact that you were already pregnant when we got married. I'm talking about the fact that Daisy might not be my biological daughter." It was a bluff, a cruel one, but necessary. I had no reason to believe Daisy wasn't mine, but the possibility would eat at all of them. Daisy looked between me and Alma, her face pale. "Is that true, Mom?" Alma's silence was answer enough. "It doesn't matter," I said, pushing the box away without opening it. "Biology doesn't make someone a father, but lies and manipulation can unmake a family." Through the windows, I could see car lights approaching, right on schedule. "Looks like we have visitors," I said as sheriff's department vehicles pulled into the clearing. Rico had called them an hour ago, reporting suspicious activity at the property. Everything I'd done was legal. It was my property. I'd invited everyone here, and I had every right to confront them about their behavior. But the optics were perfect. Police arriving to find Alma, Miles, and Ava trapped in a cabin with cameras rolling and evidence of their crimes displayed for the world to see. "This isn't over," Ava hissed as the deputies approached the cabin. "You're right," I said. "It's not." But I was just getting started. The Pinegate Community Block Party happened every year on the first Saturday in October. Main Street was closed to traffic, vendors set up booths selling funnel cakes and handmade crafts, and a small stage was erected for local musicians and community announcements. This year, I had something special planned. The events at the lake house had already made me infamous throughout town. The live stream had been viewed over 50,000 times, and clips of Alma's meltdown were circulating on every social media platform, but I wanted to make sure everyone understood exactly what had happened and why. I'd spent the week preparing my presentation, gathering evidence, and making sure every detail was perfect. Rico had helped me rent professional audio equipment and a large projection screen. We set up behind the community center, out of sight of the main festivities. At 3 p.m., I walked onto the main stage and took the microphone from Mayor Patterson, who'd been introducing the high school marching band. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice carrying across the crowd of nearly 800 people. "I know many of you have heard rumors about my family situation over the past few weeks. Today, I want to set the record straight." The crowd murmured and shifted, phones coming out to record what was clearly going to be memorable. "My name is Cedric Fallon. I've lived in this community for 20 years, built my business here, raised my daughter here, and for the past 8 months, I've been systematically betrayed by people I trusted." I nodded to Rico, who activated the projection screen. The first image showed Alma and Miles entering the Riverside Inn. "My wife, Alma Fallon, has been conducting an affair with her business associate, Miles Rourke. But that's not the worst part." Click. The next slide showed bank statements and financial records. "She's also been stealing money from our family accounts, planning to abandon our daughter and start a new life. She's committed fraud, adultery, and child abandonment." The crowd was completely silent now. Even the children had stopped running around. But the real mastermind behind this betrayal is someone most of you know as Ava Sinclair, Alma's best friend and personal assistant. Click. Ava's criminal record filled the screen. Ava's real name is Ava Kowalski. She's a convicted felon who spent 2 years in prison for fraud and embezzlement. She used to work for me, and when I fired her for stealing, she spent 6 years planning an elaborate revenge scheme. I could see Alma, Miles, and Ava at the edge of the crowd, trying to push through to reach the stage. Rico and several of my employees blocked their path. She manipulated my wife into the affair, and turned my daughter against me and launched a coordinated attack on my reputation and business, all because she couldn't accept the consequences of her own criminal behavior. The crowd was getting restless. Some people were booing, others were shouting questions. The situation was about to spiral out of control. That's when Alma broke through the crowd and rushed the stage. "You're a liar," she screamed, grabbing for the microphone. "You're destroying our family for revenge." I stepped back, letting her momentum carry her forward. She stumbled and fell, her dress tearing on the wooden platform. The crowd gasped. Miles jumped onto the stage to help her, but I was ready. 20 years of boxing training kicked in, and I delivered a perfect right cross to his jaw. He dropped like a sack of potatoes, unconscious before he hit the ground. The crowd erupted. Some people cheered, others screamed. Someone called 911. Chaos reigned. I grabbed the microphone again. "I have one more announcement," I shouted over the noise. "Effective Monday, the property at 1247 Maple Street, the house where my family has lived for 16 years, will be sold to Pinegate Development Corporation. It's going to be torn down and turned into a strip mall." Alma looked up at me from where she knelt beside Miles, her face a mask of horror. "You can't do that. It's our home." "It's my home," I corrected, "and I can do whatever I want with it." I pulled out a manila envelope and scattered the contents across the stage. Foreclosure notices, eviction papers, and a cashier's check for the full sale price of the house. "I'm leaving Pinegate," I announced, "starting over somewhere where people don't know my story. But before I go, I want everyone to understand what really happened here." I looked out at the crowd, then down at Alma and the unconscious Miles. They called me the villain in this story, said I was controlling, abusive, manipulative. Maybe they were right. Maybe I did become the monster they accused me of being. I dropped the microphone and walked to the edge of the stage. But at least I'm honest about what I am. Rico was waiting with the truck, engine running. As we drove away, I could hear sirens approaching and see the crowd surrounding the stage where Alma knelt beside Miles, her perfect life finally and completely destroyed. In the rearview mirror, I watched the chaos recede into the distance. Alma would recover eventually. She was too smart and too ruthless to stay down for long. Miles would probably press charges for assault, though the video evidence would show he'd been the aggressor. Ava would disappear, find some new identity, some new victim to manipulate. And Daisy? My daughter would have to figure out who she really was without her mother's poison filling her head. Maybe she'd forgive me someday. Maybe she wouldn't, but for the first time in months, I felt free. The rain started again as we reached the county line, drops spattering against the windshield like tears. I turned on the wipers and kept driving, leaving Pine Gate and all its ghosts behind. They'd wanted to see what I was capable of when pushed too far. Now they knew. I wore the villain's crown better than they'd ever worn their masks of respectability.